Hey, welcome back to Great American Movie Review, or if this is your first time, thanks for joining us. This is a different style video than what I normally do on the channel with the individual movie reviews, because there are a few movies that I saw throughout the course that I didn't make videos for, just not having enough time. So I figured this would be a good place to just kind of put out my thoughts on those films that I missed from the last couple months, specifically covering October and November. Those films specifically being The Creator, The Hunger Games: Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, Saltburn, and Beyonce's Renaissance concert film. All right, let's get right into it. First up, The Creator. The Creator is one I was looking forward to, however, the title is kind of generic in a way that didn't really get me super excited for it. But Gareth Edwards, I really like his visual style. And he's done the Godzilla film from 2014, and he did the Star Wars film Rogue One. And so it's cool seeing him play in a sci fi playground again. And what I'll say about the film is Edwards does a very good job at using his budget. This is not nearly as high of a budget as you would think looking at it. And it really visually is a beautifully made film in the science fiction realm. It stars John David Washington, and I've just been really enjoying watching Denzel's kid become a star in his own right. And I've enjoyed him in Tenet, I enjoyed him in Black Klansman, and I enjoy him again here. He's a great just leading man already in just the handful of films that I've seen him in. The film also stars people like Allison Janney, Ken Watanabe, Gemma Chan, and specifically I want to highlight the kid actor Madeline Yuno as Alfie in this. She is so good as this little kid who I'm not going to get into the details too much, even though these are belated reviews. I'm still going to keep it kind of broad because not a lot of people saw this movie for one, but it's largely a story of John David Washington and this kid, trying to travel together in the wake of this kind of war between humans and robots, and the humans have mostly wiped out all of the robots except for in some countries they still harbor them and allow them to exist, and this kid is kind of the ultimate thing that the humans have to destroy. But John David Washington, who is enlisted to be part of the team to take out this thing, then wants to protect it once he actually learns more about it. And it's their journey together, and their relationship in the movie really works. Unfortunately, this is one of those where creatively it doesn't come together for me. It feels pretty hollow in its themes of artificial intelligence. Especially in the modern age, you'd be thinking, like, okay, they can lean into that with AI becoming such a thing in the news and everything. Obviously, this movie was made a little bit before a lot of that stuff started, becoming as talked about, but it never quite delivers on its thematic elements. It ends up feeling a little bit empty. So if you want to watch it as just like a pretty cool looking sci-fi movie with some cool action in it, absolutely go for it. But this is not going to be one that's really deep and makes you think about the nature of humanity and stuff, something like a Blade Runner would do. This is a perfect, I'm just going to throw it onto my TV. It's going to look really nice, and I'm just going to like zone out a little bit because it's not necessarily going to like grip you in that kind of way. It's a good casual watch, but I wish it had something more to it. It kind of keeps me from quite liking it because I do feel there was that extra potential here that it didn't follow through on. But yeah, that's just my quick thoughts on The Creator. Next up is The Hunger Games: Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. So I read the Hunger Games books when they came out. I was the perfect age to get caught up in the hype around all of that. And I mean, the first two books are great. Mockingjay is a bit of a mess. I don't think it's the worst thing ever, but I definitely think it was a mistake to split that into two parts because I really like I enjoy the first Hunger Games. I rewatched them all leading up to this one. And the first Hunger Games I think is solid. I don't think it's a great movie, but I do enjoy it. The second one, though, I think just steps it up in every single way. That's when Francis Lawrence came on and he directed the rest of the franchise, including this latest installment. And I just really loved Catching Fire. I think it leaves it on a really interesting note, and I thought that there was potential to adapt Mockingjay into a film that could have even surpassed the book. But that fateful decision to split it into two parts, capitalize on something that had become popular with Twilight and Harry Potter before it, this kind of really, I think, killed that trend, because then people didn't want to go see the last Divergent film when that came out and it never actually got made. So I think that's because that wasn't a book that warranted two parts at all. And those films are really tiresome to me. Like, there's a franchise that I think was on an upward trajectory. I think it just really killed my interest in it, which is why I was a little late seeing this one, because I wasn't that excited for it. But I started to hear some good things from people, so I went to go check it out. And there are so many good elements in this. The acting by the performers is all great. Viola Davis is a really fun kind of villainous character in the film, and Tom Blythe, who's playing the younger version of Snow. I've never read this prequel book, by the way. I the movies kind of killed my interest in going back again after they released this book just a few years ago. But maybe I do check out the book, because maybe I think it'll be better done than the movie, because once again, this is one that didn't quite live up to its potential. I think Tom Blythe is good as Snow, but I never was able to get into his mind in the way that I feel like I needed to for this kind of story. I felt a disconnect from that character. I went to go see this with Hannah, and both of us came out of the movie kind of just feeling apathetic towards it by the end of it, which is a shame, because once again, there are so many good elements. We just both wanted it to be something different than what it was. I thought the Lucy Gray character played by Rachel Zegler was fascinating, and to the point where I was like, I wish this movie was about her, because I'm way more interested and way more connected to that character than I am to the Snow character here. I understand that this is, following Snow is more connective tissue to the original Hunger Games, but I was just so much more interested in that character on the side, which, I mean, she's definitely, the number two character in the film, but it's just about Snow. It's his story and how he became the president. And yeah, I mean, there are other great things about it. I love the production stuff. I'm kind of excited still for Francis Lawrence to be doing a Bioshock movie, because there's some of that kind of flavor in here, in the kind of retro future stylized thing going on here, which I didn't quite pick up from the first Hunger Games, but it's interesting setting this, like 50 years earlier or whatever, 70 years earlier, that the technology doesn't quite reflect our reality, because you understand that it's set in some far off distant version of the US, but it kind of makes it feel like a completely different world to some extent with some of the production stuff. But I thought it was cool still, so I went with it. But yeah, it just never really came together for me, and by the end of it, I just felt like I sat through something that it really never stirred anything in me. It never moved me. And that made me really disappointed, mostly because of how good so much of the supporting elements of this film are. All right, moving on. The next one up is Saltburn. This is the latest film from director Emerald Fennell. She won an Oscar for her previous film for writing Promising Young Woman, which I loved. Promising Young Woman, I thought that was a really nice kind of takedown of that kind of nice guy mentality, the way that society protects certain people. Saltburn, for me, is a movie that just never took off. I didn't really like a lot of the artistic creative choices. The camera doesn't move very much. It's the 4:3 aspect ratio, and I didn't really feel like it was that justified in the film to have that. The humor just wasn't landing for me, and it's honestly not due to the performers. It's kind of a Hunger Games situation again, because I think all the performers are doing excellent jobs. I even like the comedic beats in the writing itself, but in the direction, I feel like it lost something, specifically in the editing. Honestly, like, the humorous beats just were not working for me throughout the film. I hardly laughed, even though I think that there are things that I thought were funny when they were said, when I thought about them. But I mean, to me, I was like, this is just the talented Mr. Ripley, right? But more contained than that. I think that, if anything, this movie has this kind of psychosexual drama angle to it that works a lot better than its eat the rich elements. And I think that if it really leaned into that, then you'd have a really just solid watch for all the freaks out there. Because there's some stuff in here, like, I don't have a weak stomach when it comes to film. I ate barbecue the day after watching Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I don't really have a problem with that. But in this one, there were a couple of things in here that like I looked away from for a minute because I was like, it's just disturbing in that kind of realm. But I kind of wish it leaned more into that and less from the whole eat the rich thing, because I don't really feel like it had that much to say by the end of it. And certain decisions in how they choose to reveal things really just kind of knocked all of the intrigue away for me. So by the end of it, kind of like Hunger Games, I just kind of felt like I don't really care about what I just watched, which is an unfortunate thing. But I loved the final scene though, because I don't like. Don't judge me too hard for that. Not liking the movie that much, but loving the final scene. If you've seen it, you know what I'm talking about. But yeah, that's just kind of my quick thoughts on Saltburn there. Barry Keoghan is incredible as always, and Jacob Elordi is continuing to be one to watch. So yeah, just good stuff from the actors again. Just once again, just didn't quite work for me. And the last film that I'll be covering on this belated review kind of quick thing is the new Beyonce concert film, Renaissance. My wife Hannah is a massive Beyonce fan, so we had to see this as soon as possible. I'm counting this as November, even though it had like a December 1st release date, because we technically saw it on Thursday, November 30th. So for me, I saw it in November, saw it in IMAX, biggest possible screen. We couldn't afford tickets to go to an actual Beyonce concert, but getting to see this on the big screen is really, for me, the best case scenario. I get kind of overwhelmed, overstimulated at concerts, surrounded by so many people. So watching this in a theatrical environment. I watched Stop Making Sense earlier this year, and that was really the ideal way for me to experience that film for the first time. So I was excited to see this kind of production brought to the biggest screen available to me, and it delivers. Beyonce, unlike the Taylor Swift thing, she has documented her whole tour. So she's not just showing one show and just playing it through in its entirety. She has behind the scenes footage kind of intercut between different points in the show, as well as it's cutting between the different shows, which she has different outfits for all of these, but the choreography is the same. She kind of did the same thing with her Homecoming film on Netflix a few years back, which if you're looking for like the greatest hits of Beyonce kind of performance show, stylistically, that one, Homecoming on Netflix, is what you want there from the greatest hits perspective and getting a great show still. This one is very much dedicated to this new album that she's made. There are some of her big hits in there too, and just some like little nods to some of her other songs, but this one really is a celebration of this one album primarily. And I mean, it's such a tremendous show. Like, it goes into detail on like the behind the scenes of it, which I thought was really cool, and it highlights certain, different craftspeople and stuff, and the different dancers they get credited on screen. It really goes to an effort to show kind of what goes into making a tour like this happen, which I thought was a unique angle for a concert film to do, because that kind of makes it more than just a concert film. And for me, that engaged me as much as like the music would just do it on its own, because it's great music. I mean, she's a terrific performer, but I was genuinely kind of blown away by just the production of everything, and impressed by how she was able to draw me in still with the behind the scenes stuff, especially somebody like Beyonce, who doesn't like have a very active public life. You don't get to see a lot of her personal life. She's kind of selective with revealing that, and she is here too, because she is the author of this story. She's the filmmaker. She is the one who chose what makes it into the film and not. She's highlighting some stuff that, her flaws and whatnot, but in a way that kind of adds to her mystique in a weird way. But maybe one day we'll get a film about Beyonce from a different perspective. But I think it's really admirable how she's been able to control the narrative of her life and of her career. And I mean, this film is just kind of the embodiment of that. There's a lot of great diversity on stage present, which you don't often see in media in general. So you get all sorts of different types of people, which is cool. You get, plus size people, trans individuals just on stage dancing with her. There's just a lot of joy, and it's very lively, and it was a great experience. Even though I'm not like somebody who knows her catalog back and forth like my wife does, I've really only been introduced to her over the last few years because of my wife. But like I'm familiar with her biggest hits and everything. But now I know a lot more than I did 5 years ago. But yeah, that one's still in theaters right now. So if you're like, man, couldn't afford tickets to this and I gotta see this, there were some people there too that did go to it but didn't have great seats, and so they were like, this is really great, just like getting a more kind of up close look at this concert. But yeah, that's, I think, of these four films, Renaissance is the one that I think is the most worth seeing in theaters. Not that they're even all available. Some of these are going to be coming home soon. But yeah, that's just my quick thoughts on these films that I didn't cover in other reviews for the last couple months. I might do this again in December. Let me know if you liked this format. We have our Thursday podcast shows that we still do every Thursday. I still try to get out as many individual reviews as I can. I try to keep that within the weekend of release. Tell me if I'm being ridiculous with that, though, because if like, that's crazy, just put out the reviews, then I'll do that. That's fine. But you can already plan on getting one of these again for December, especially with the influx of movies around the award season stuff. Yeah, that'll do it for this. Thank you for checking us out. Subscribe if you like this kind of content. Once again, let me know what you think of this specific video, and we'll see you at the movies.